We'll go ahead and call our meeting to order this evening. First item is to ask everyone to please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Is it Mr. or Ms. Acting Secretary this evening? Ms. Acting Secretary?
Yes.
Would you please call roll of the commissioners?
Can do. Andrew Sutton,
Here.
Alan Bess,
Here.
Brian McArthur,
Here.
Dell Williams is excused, Steve Buss is
Here.
Oh, go ahead.
I'm here.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. Justin Lurk is excused, Phil Hogan, Tim Seidenstricker,
I'm here.
Drew Sofia,
Here.
Brandon Roberts,
Here.
David Bookless,
Here.
Robert Sweeney,
Here.
Christy Hobatali is also excused. It's her birthday. And then Sarah Turner, here.
Thank you, Ms. Acting Secretary. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the September 24th meeting. At this time, I'm calling for a motion and a second to approve the minutes. Motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. I do believe there's a change to the minutes, Mr. Hogan, correct?
There's a change that says that I call the meeting to order, and you did,
I did.
so that needs to be changed.
All right, thank you. So will you amend your motion, Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mr. McArthur?
Yes.
We now have an amended motion to approve the minutes as modified. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Minutes are approved as submitted. We do not have a public hearing this evening, but we do have an opportunity now for public comment. So if there's anyone here this evening that has any questions or any comments for the Planning Commission, this would be the opportunity to do that. Once we move past this item on the agenda, we will no longer have any opportunity for anyone here to have any questions or comments for the Commission. That being said, is there anyone here or online that has any questions or comments for the Planning Commission? No online? Okay, great, thank you. We have no public hearing. We do have two items on our other business portion of the agenda. The first is 7A, which is a comprehensive plan update. This is a kind of a revisiting of the present land use map discussion. Ms. Turner, is this your presentation?
Yes, it is.
Please proceed when you're ready.
And it is a very brief presentation, but to kind of revisit really quickly, last time I did give everyone these handouts for addressing the outliers. If you still have any comments or feedback that you'd like to provide, you can either email that to me, or if you have it written down, feel free to give me those. But we are still collecting feedback on that if you have it. But moving on to tonight's presentation, again, it's pretty brief. Staff has finished the present land use map. We kind of retooled it for the current day. It is quite a large map because it does include the 1.5 mile study area outside of the city, just to kind of get a feel for all of the land uses in our community. So to kind of briefly go over the legend, of course, the Arnold city boundary is in a bright white to kind of differentiate. And that bright yellow is residential. And to be clear, we have dwellings as a whole separated into 3 categories. There is residential, there is essentially condos, 2-family dwellings up to 4-family dwellings, and then there is a separate category for apartments in manufactured home parks. Moving on to non-residential uses, in the city specifically, we are able to, of course, know the land uses within the city, so there is a separate category for commercial and industrial. However, as far as this data goes, we did base it off of the county's property classifications for tax purposes, and outside of the city, they have everything that is non-residential under one category of commercial. So outside of the city, we didn't really feel comfortable making that as that distinction. So it's all just commercial/industrial if it's outside of the city. And then of course there is institutional uses, which is generally speaking schools and city property like the rec center and city hall, open space, conservation, parks. That's a lot of flood buyouts as well as parks, both privately and publicly owned. And then the last category of utility is what it says on the 10 areas that are, you know, owned by Ameren or the sewer district, etc. So of course, we're not going to go over every area of this map tonight. This is just kind of a zoom in just so that you get an idea. I also have a large format printed version if you would like to look at it in person, but also tomorrow morning I will be emailing all of the commissioners a PDF that you can look over. If you guys have any questions, comments, or feedback, you know, feel free to let us know. But otherwise, that's pretty much it. We have a map for you to look over.
Thank you, Ms. Turner. I just remind the commissioners, I know I had a chance to look over the previous presentation and make some notes on that as well. I need to provide that to you, Sarah, as well. Would you mind sending that same slide deck out when you send out the PDF tomorrow so that the commissioners have that in case some of us maybe have discarded that?
Absolutely.
All right, thank you. All right, we're now moving on to 7B, which is a discussion on unregulated gaming machines.
Thank you.
Mr. Bookless, this is your presentation?
Yes, sir. Unregulated gaming machines, this is something that the city council has discussed at a number of meetings. It's actually something that there's an informal group, sort of a municipal league of Jefferson County cities that they've discussed it as well. And there's been some coordination between, you know, City of Arnold and this group to look at this issue, and I'll get into a little bit more detail about what that even means, unregulated gaming machines. So they look like regular gaming machines, like slot machines that you'd see at a casino. They're commonly seen at gas stations, convenience stores, sometimes at restaurants, bars, and markets. Like I said, they look very much like a legal gaming machine that's regulated by the state of Missouri. The name will tell you these are unregulated by the state of Missouri. And there are some concerns and issues related to that we'll get into in just a minute. What's different about these from a regulated gaming machine is they're not considered a game of chance because the player has the option to see whether they'll win or lose in the next play. So in other words, the result is predetermined. It's not a game of chance. Players can base a bet knowing that they're going to lose simply to advance the machine to its next pre-reveal outcome. I know it sounds kind of squirrely, but that's the way they work, and that's the way that they've been sort of argued by those that put these machines in place that they are not gambling. And I'll get to in a minute about what the courts have said about that. As related to the machines, what you haven't seen here in Arnold, but you're seeing it elsewhere in the state and across the country, are these unregulated gaming parlors that look very much like a mini casino in a sense. However, technically they're not gambling. Because they're not regulated, it's not illegal for children to play them. And in fact, these three pictures that you see in front of you are all from the state of Missouri, not Arnold. And apparently they came from a lawsuit that's ongoing in the state right now. Presently, it's a legal gray area. There has been a case on the other side of the state where they were found to be illegal gambling devices and they were destroyed. But that local prosecutors in other counties haven't moved forward with that for various reasons. Other courts have said that they're not, as you can see up there, and the legislature has not acted to resolve the situation and make any kind of determination as to what they are. So, but once again, we're kind of in this gray area where they're sort of legal. And as I said to you, the city council has a lot of concerns about these because there are secondary adverse impacts related to these machines that they're concerned about. And this is something that they discussed, as I said, at multiple meetings. And they will be proposing some ordinance or code change.
We go on to say that this ordinance doesn't authorize actual gambling devices, slot machines. This only applies to these unregulated gaming machines. The next section is that it requires that the operators and the location with the machines get an annual license from the city, and that they have to comply with all city codes, and it applies if any machine that they want to display, keep, or maintain for public patronage in the city is illegal, basically. The next section speaks to some licensing issues. So in order to have between 3 and 20 machines, you would also have to have a liquor by the drink license at your location. And what that does is basically say, if you have that between 3 and 20, you have to be a bar or a restaurant. And the thinking behind that is a bar and restaurant is a place where people go, hang out for a while, there's plenty of parking, and we think that's a reasonable number. The cutoff at 20 is because previously you defined an arcade, a video arcade, as having more than 20 machines. So we thought that was the right number to place on here. And then for below 3, 1 or 2 machines, that could potentially still be at a gas station where you tend to see these places, these machines rather. And the reason 1 or 2 at a gas station as opposed to more than that is gas stations aren't designed to have people sitting there all day long taking up parking spaces. It's for people to come and get gas, get convenience goods, get beer, snacks, sodas, those things, and leave. And folks using these machines tend to park themselves there for some time when they play. Let's see. We also say that if you have more than 20, as I said, it has to be in an arcade, and we're also suggesting that we create a new use called an unregulated gaming parlor. That's a trend that you're seeing across the country, where it's kind of like you'll see in a strip center, a space with maybe 50 machines, 40 machines. People go out, hang out, play those games, but we would want that to be in the right location, so that's why we created a particular use. Planning Commission would have to determine what the appropriate location might be, and we'll get to a few more details on that in just a second. No licenses will be issued if the operator, or the applicant rather, has any obligations to the city, any unpaid bills and so forth, any other licenses that haven't been renewed. And then the next section speaks to the process for getting their license. I'm not going to go into detail, but it's very similar to the business licensing process. And then we came up with a number of standards that any operator and location would have in place. And we did talk about this at the August work session. First would be that both the operator, that's the company that provides the machine, and the location would be jointly and severally responsible for all these regulations being upheld. So should they not uphold the regulations, we could take both of them to court, essentially. Okay. You have to be 21 years or older to play, and in locations where there are people under the age of 21 in the building, the machines would have to be segregated by, like, say, a velvet rope, something of that nature, and be within the sight distance of somebody over 21 that works for the company or works for the location, so they can make sure that minors aren't playing the game. There has to be somebody over 21 working there at all hours, and that person has to be able to see not only the machines, but if there's limited view of the machines, they have to be able to see into the entrance as well. There would have to be signage at the machines, as well as any ATMs that direct people to, like, Gamblers Anonymous and things of that nature. And then we would have the fee schedule, and this is again something we discussed. The establishment, the bar, the gas station, wherever, they would pay a $500 flat fee plus $250 per machine that's operated or set up for operation. And then the operator, the third-party company that owns the machine, they would pay a flat $2,000 per location. And again, these are numbers that you discussed at the August meeting. I'm not going to go through the details of this, but this is the procedure should any of the regulations be violated. They could get their license suspended and potentially revoked. There is an appeal process should that happen. And then the next section speaks to what's exempt from this article. We already spoke to actual gaming devices that are already regulated, but this does not apply to what we call amusement vending devices, video games, pinball machines. This does not apply to that at all. And that also that there are other regulations that might apply to a business. This doesn't give them a buy in any of those other regulations. They still have to abide by other city rules and regulations. So that's it for the first ordinance. The second ordinance addresses the section of the code that Tammy is probably most familiar with, and that's actually where we have business licenses. And what this basically does is cross-reference. So if somebody goes into the business license section, they'll know that the licensing for these machines are contained in a different section of the code. This is just how we do it for fireworks, same process. And then the last section of the code that would have to be amended would be the zoning ordinance. I spoke to that a bit ago. So the first thing, we would create a new use, as I said, a unregulated gaming parlor. That's when they have 20 or more machines. Potentially where it could be, and this still has to go to planning commission. Perhaps they would be allowed as conditional uses in the C2, C3, and then by reference the C4. But then we would have particular regulations that apply, namely that they have to get a CUP. It has to address issues of parking, loading, and circulation, and that the parking requirement would be the same ratio as that for commercial service facilities or retail sales. It would only allow for one of these parlors in any shopping center or building, and then additionally there would be a 1,000-foot proximity requirement that a parlor couldn't be within 1,000 feet of a church, a school, a residential use, or any other unregulated gaming parlor, whether they're inside the city or outside the city. And that measure is a straight line from entrance to entrance of the buildings. And then we have some suggested hours of operation. That would be a limitation. They could certainly be open fewer hours than that, but that would be the maximum hours. And that's everything that we have drafted.